boys and girls. Let's do a quick review about volume. If you remember correctly, volume is the amount of space inside a container, and a container is a 3D object. So it has 3 dimensions that we're going to have to be dealing with. And in 5th grade, we work with a special kind of container. Our container is called a rectangular prism. So write that down. Rectangular prism. And when you see the word prism and you're talking about a 3D shape, you're talking about a 3D shape whose faces are all made up of rectangles. Now, that doesn't include the base. When we put a shape in front of the word prism, that tells us about the shape's base. So this is a rectangular prism because this face and the face underneath are rectangles, and they're put together in 3-dimensional shapes where all the other faces are rectangles as well. So let me give you an example. You could have a triangular prism. And a triangular prism, if any of you have ever actually used a glass prism to reflect light and get the rainbow effect, that is something that has triangles on each of its bases, but the other 3 faces are all rectangles. So in our case, we're working with a rectangular prism, which means all of the faces in that container are made up of rectangles. Okay, and in order to find the volume of a rectangular prism, we have several formulas. But the way we do it is we express it in cubic units. So again, let's talk about cubic units. And that's the number of cubes that will fit inside this rectangular prism without having any of them cross over each other or without having any spaces in between those cubes. And we use something called unit cubes to measure that. And these cubes are cubes that have 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch dimensions, or perhaps it has 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter dimensions, or even we could go as far as 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter. And obviously we're not going to put cubes that are that size in, but that's how we express finding how much space is inside this container. So let's talk now about the formulas. You have this written down somewhere in your journal, but we'll review them again. So those are the formulas for finding the volume of a rectangular prism. Now, the most common one, and the one that we use most often, is length times the width times height. And you see that expressed as L times W times H, or sometimes you see it as L dot, which means times dot H. So it could be written either way. And that's the first way we find it. If you recall back to when we were building things, the other thing we did was we said it could also be length times width, and instead of calling it height, does anybody remember what we called it? I can just hear some of you shouting layers. So that's correct. You can count up the layers which are equal to the height. So length times width times layers is another way we can find it. And we know that one of the ways we can find it is to find the area of the base times the height. And because length times width is equal to area, we say we can find the area of the base, and I'll write it like this, times layers, or area of the base times the height. Now remember, area is in square units, so it's a two-dimensional thing that we're finding, but then when we multiply it by its height, we are changing it into a three-dimensional object, and again, finding the volume now for a rectangular prism. And there's one other way that we found it, and some of you found this way much easier, is if we found the area of the base, and then we added it to itself until we had the correct amount of layers. So that's another way. We talk about it as being additive area. And additive area will actually give us volume. So let's write that over here. Additive area. And that's when we take the area of the base plus the area of the base plus the area of the base until we get the number of layers that we have, and that will give us the volume of the rectangular prism. And if we think about that, if area of the base is in square units and layers is in units, and we multiply them together, we come up with cubic units, written like this, for volume. And sometimes we know what those units are. So maybe it's cubic inches, or maybe it's cubic feet, or maybe it's cubic centimeters. So if you know what the unit is, then you can put it, the unit, and a little tiny 3, or we say unit to the 3rd power, or cubic units. So we're going to use these formulas on some of the ones that we're trying, and I will have a worksheet for you to try underneath this video. But I also want to show you a website. I'd like you to play around with the website first. The link will be in this video underneath in the email. I'd like you to try some of these on your own first. First, doing the ones they give you, and then perhaps making some up on your own. So if you follow me over to the computer, I'll show you how it works. I'm hoping that most of you remember that what you're seeing here in front of you is called a net. And a net is a two-dimensional version of a 3D container, or a 3D rectangular prism. And if you click on this net, you can see how it becomes a three-dimensional object on the screen. And so if we're trying to find out volume, we're going to try to first fill in the base and see what the area of the base is. And I might do that by filling it in with, I lost my cursor, by filling it in with cubes. So I'm going to hit cubes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So I know that the area of the base is 20 square units. So that would be, if I just looked at this green area here, which would be what's laying against the bottom of the prism. And that would be 20 square inches. Now I might want to go by layers after that. So I have 20, and I'm going to put another layer on, and then I'm going to put another layer on, and I'm going to see if that, in fact, takes care of my prism, which it does. So I can easily see, I can close up the top too, I can easily see that the area of the base was 20, And then I added another layer on, and that would make 40. And I added one more layer on, and that volume becomes 60 cubic units. And so we put in the 60 where it says volume, and then we hit the check mark, and I was correct. So that was doing additive area when I was trying to find the volume of my prism. Hit that just right. So that's how I did that one. Now, I can go and point to the arrow, and they will give me a different one to fill in. And so I look at the different one, and I can work with cubes, or I can work with rows. So let's see, I have 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows, 4 rows, and I can easily see that there are 4 rows there. I'm still trying to figure out what the area of that base is, and so I need to count these cubes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 times 4 is 36. And then I'm going to continue. I don't want to give you the answers, but I'm going to continue with my layers now and see how many layers I have. And see if I'm not really sure how many layers, I can go up there and say, nope, that's not enough. Or I can bring this up and see how much I need to fill in. And then I can determine what the volume is and put it in the volume. And then go on to the next one. So try a few of those. The other thing that you can do is you can move to where you can customize it. So now you get to give the dimensions. So let's say in here they use, instead of using length, they use depth. So they have a width, a depth, and a height, which is the same thing as having a length, a width, and a height. So I'm going to say, okay, let's see, I'm going to make it a width of 5, a depth of 6, and a height of, let's say, 2 or 3. Let's do 3. Okay, so now they're going to give me the net that matches the things that I put in. And so you can, again, fill it up with cubes, or maybe you just want to use the formula. Maybe you just want to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, 5 times 6 is 30, and so that would give me the area of the base. Once I had the 30, I would have to figure out how high my layers went up. So 30 times 3 is 90, or I could say 1 layer is 30, 2 layers is 60, 3 layers is 90. I could close it up into a nice box to see that I don't have any spaces or any cubes overlapping. And I could type in that I have a volume of 90 and then check it myself. And of course, it's correct. So have some fun with that. Have some fun playing around. I'll make sure that I send the link so that you can get on it. It's a free website, and try some of those out. Enjoy yourself, boys and girls.